to this Sunday live stream of Venezuela Insider. Today is February 22 of 2026. Yeah, another week with actually very positive week. A lot of great news for the country, and actually one of the bad news is that some good news I cannot share it publicly. Will be mostly for my clients and my close collaborators. But yeah, we're gonna review some of the news of the week that affects Venezuela overall. That, like I said, most of these things are actually positive, and we are, like I said, on a warp speed right now on the changes needed in the country. And yeah, today we are gonna review some of those. Yeah, something on my eye. And well, before we start, a couple of news from today. The U.S. men's hockey team just won the gold medal against Canada, and this is the first time that since that the U.S. men's team wins the gold medal on the Olympics since the Miracle of Ice. I love that story of the Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid, in the 80s. So yeah, great news. So shout out all the people of the US for that victory. With Latin American news, the very renowned musician Willie Colon passed away yesterday. And yeah, he was a very prominent figure on Latin American music, so passed away. And we got the news just recently about the situation in Puerto Vallarta with some drug lord, Mexican drug lord that has been, on leave. And yeah, we have some security issues over there. Okay, let's start with the, as the title says, Drill Baby Drill in Venezuela. And this is something, it's going on a lot. We have a lot of interest from oil multinationals right now, oil companies investing in the country. Some of them are doing the due diligence. Another bunch is they're on the process of going back to the country. And we have, of course, incumbents like Chevron and Repsol that are already in the country, and they are expanding further operations. And this is something that, of course, we needed a particular status quo, rule of law, and all that jazz in order to see further expansion of the Venezuelan oil industry. We have still to remember that Venezuela used to produce over 3 million barrels of crude oil per day. Right now, we are roughly, give or take, 1 million. But according to the U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, the oil production should be revamped to plus 40% by the end of the year, 30-40%. And this will happen because in Venezuela we have a lot of, let's say, projects in order to, increase the production that just needs a little bit of refurbishing, a little bit of extra investment. So no big major investment is required. Everything is there. Just needs, the will for some of these companies to take action. And the only thing needed was that the political situation was, until a certain degree, reasonable, and we are on that scenario right now. And now afterwards, in order to fully expand oil operations in the country, we're gonna need a better rule of law. The rule of law right now in 2026 is way better compared to just several weeks ago, and is dramatically improving. So right now, this is the moment, this is, like, it's appropriate today with the Winter Olympics. And with hockey, there is a term called the power play. That is when you have an advantage because the other team lost one of the players for a couple of minutes. And yeah, right now we are on the power play moment. And just, the boring stuff. Doing the due diligence, know what you're doing, having a particular know-how combined with the nuances of the situation. And yeah, that's when you have great opportunities, not just going willy-nilly. And yeah, we have, since it's Olympics time, yeah, we have a power play here right now, and that's what I'm, increasing my, my content creation and my communications on this regard because I want, everyone who's watching this have that particular opportunity, that particular power play, and no pun intended. And now, of course, if you're watching this, I'm not saying start an oil multinational or anything like that. I've said this many times, but yeah, since I have new audience, I have to keep pounding this rock. Is Venezuelan economy? You have the oil economy, so the Venezuelan economy goes as the oil economy goes, and then trickles down to the non-oil economy. Most likely, if you're watching this, your opportunities will be on the non-oil economy. But you need to know about what's going on with the oil economy in order to, to see manifest this trickle down to the non-oil economy. Now, this is common knowledge amongst Venezuelans. At the very least, people who are small business owners, maybe not fancy business owners or anything like that, but they know this. So the more savvy ones like to track this thing. And that's why of course, I do it myself. And I share this with you guys because if you have your eye on Venezuela, you need to know this thing, what's going on with the oil economy. Very good on that. Now, one major news that we got this week is top military visits to Venezuela. The commander of Southcom, the U.S. Southern Command, the General Francis Donovan, visited the country this week. Basically, in order to see that everything is going on schedule, that, the decisions that need to be made are being made, and apparently, well, with mixed results, but most is on the right track, apparently. Now, other one that visited the country is the Assistant Secretary of War, Joseph Humire, that is I was shocked when I saw him visit. He was in Caracas just this week, and I was shocked to see him because he was very, very, very critical with the Venezuelan government and very feisty, and well, he was there. So imagine if that guy can just put his foot in the country. Well, that's good news because it tells you that regarding safety considerations and rule of law, the country is working better. Remember that the biggest issue with Venezuela is how random and arbitrary are things on the government level. So what we're seeing by now is a warp speed changes, and that's why this is, it's inconceivable how fast things are happening. So most of the changes are going towards having a way better rule of law instead of this random and arbitrary status quo that changes a lot and most of the time is for the worse, and right now is for the better. Okay, now let's go with the Amnesty Bill that was approved. in Congress this week, and this this an amnesty for political persecution. There are a lot of political prisoners or people who are already free but under certain legal conditions. So it's very important that we have this particular amnesty bill because it sends the message that the rule of law in Venezuela is being improving towards making them more coherent decisions. And it was a particular reason why a lot of incoherent and random and arbitrary decisions were being made in the country in the past, like decade and a half, something like that. And right now, this sets the tone towards the right direction. If you're watching this from abroad, you say, well, I don't care about it, I just care about doing business or whatever, or just visiting the country. But this is very important on two very important aspects. The first is business, because in order to do business, investment, whatever, you need clear rules of engagement that in Venezuela you did not have until recently, and still the situation is mutating very quickly, but going towards the right direction. And the other thing is safety. One of the reasons why Venezuela is not as safe, I said this many times, Venezuela is way safer than most people think, and is safer that I believe regarding street crime than countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. Well, in the situation that we have right now in Mexico, yeah, I think I can safely assure that. But what makes Venezuela not as safe is how random and arbitrary the authorities tend to act. That most of the time nothing bad will happen, but when it happens, it's pretty bad. Anyways, and yeah, that's why you need to know this thing. And if you really are interested in Venezuela, you need to know these things and you need to understand these things. This is something that you are not gonna get from a traditional talking head in mainstream media or in a YouTube channel from a non-Venezuelan, that I have to endure a lot of terrible analysis about Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela is on a unique situation, it's a unique country, and most of the terrible analysts never been in the country, most of them not even speak Spanish. The only thing that they understand about Venezuela is just using proxies that is mistaken. Some of them use as proxies other countries in Latin America, and I mean, and even they go and do this negligent activity of comparing Venezuela with the Middle East. I mean, I don't know what these people are thinking when they do those terrible analyses. I mean, I feel shame for them because, I mean, they don't care about their reputation or anything like that. I don't know. And most of these people have some sort of reputation in other affairs. But regarding Venezuela, not only there are novices, I mean, they are terrible. They give this terrible analysis, and they do it, they're very cocky, and they think, they are killing it, and it's terrible. I mean, and it's frankly embarrassing for these people. I mean, for instance, I remember a few months ago, I was listening to this economist, is very famous, from Johns Hopkins. I forgot the name. Steve Hanke, that is pro-gold, is a gold bug, anti-Bitcoin. Okay, he has his reasons, and legitimate reasons. But regarding Venezuela, his analysis is horrible. And at some moment, since he's a very elder man, he was an economic advisor for one of the worst governments in Venezuela, the one with Rafael Caldera. And his political analysis is completely horrific. Don't listen to him. And his economic analysis is terrible. This is a PhD from Johns Hopkins. And he's horrible. I mean, I'm frightened when I see these people that supposedly, have great resumes, and give a worse analysis about Venezuela than mine, and I'm frankly terrified because these people have credibility. So there are investors, bona fide investors, accredited investors with millions in dry powder in order to invest in the country. Then they got burned and they are going to blame the country, and instead of blaming the terrible analysts and advisors that they have, like Steve Hanke and like several other these guys. The other day, I was watching another guy that is not as famous or anything like that, but he has a company where he gives advice, financial advice or whatever. And yeah, and he was saying, no, my clients are very interested in Venezuela. And this particular guy was giving his analysis first on, I mean, it was horrific. The analysis was horrific. And this guy has clients, millionaire clients with millions of dollars to invest, and they are listening to this guy. And I'm like, good Lord, these people are going to lose their money if they listen to this guy. And the political analysis was horrible. The economic analysis was terrible. But that guy doesn't understand Venezuela at all. And he's advising millionaires for investing in the country. So, I don't know. And that's why it's very spooky, the situation in Venezuela. Who are you listening? I mean, thanks to you, well, thank God, I mean, you guys are listening to me here right now, and you're gonna get a better perspective from a Venezuelan that has decades of experience in, you know, in major industries in the country, in the oil industry, in finance and real estate, whatever. I mean, but overall, there are a lot of things that are common sense, that are common knowledge in the country that these people cannot grasp. And if you cannot grasp those particular situations that are, I'm not going to say unique, but are very particular of Venezuela, the rest, economics, business, whatever you're going to do, I mean, it's going to be completely wrong if you don't understand those particular nuances about the country. And yeah, well, this week we got AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, giving analysis. I mean, it was so horrible that at the very least, it's a consensus that she looked completely pathetic, the things that she said about Venezuela. Now, she said a bunch of random things, mistaken things, all over regarding geopolitics in Munich. But I mean, these women cannot even point Venezuela map. Literally cannot point Venezuela in a map. And she's flown out to Munich on an important conference, and that's the people giving you advice about Venezuela. They don't know nothing about Venezuela. They have terrible political bias that they cloud their judgment and their analysis about the country. They don't know nothing about the country, and that's the people that they're listening. And then some people will do something about Venezuela regarding investing or whatever might be the case. They're gonna get burned, and then they're gonna blame the country. No, blame yourself if you're hiring people like AOC for getting the truth or the reality or the pragmatic status quo about the country. If you're hiring someone like AOC, you deserve losing all your money, and I'm not gonna feel sorry, not even a little bit. So you have to be careful on that. And yeah, I have a very long list of terrible analysis about Venezuela. I'm not gonna even bother to mention today. But I mean, all of these guys look like geniuses next to AOC. And yeah, this is something that I had to get out of my chest. Yeah, let me get some water. We're alive, so please bear with me. Now, other news that we have is banking. And this is something that is not as discussed as the oil industry, but this is very important because one of the biggest destructions in Venezuela regarding economic destruction was on the banking sector. The banking industry in Venezuela is completely wrecked. Basically, since the start of the currency exchange controls that we are hoping will be eliminated on, let's say, by the end of the year or maybe by the next year. A lot of things that you have to work out on that regard. But that's one of the main reasons that why the Venezuelan economy has been destroyed. The currency exchange control is horrible. Dealing, something like basic payments, something like that, is horrible because you don't have a clear rule of law regarding how the financial system works. Because you have a government approved from the central bank exchange rate, but it's capped and it's very hard to actually make the conversion like you do on a normal country, when you swipe your card or whatever. So that creates the incentive for a black market rate that is not official, but it's the one that if you want to get an exchange, I'm not gonna say on real time because it still takes a time, but if you're gonna do the exchange rate, you have to go to this black market rate, and that creates a lot of distortions, a lot of frictions for business owners, for everyone, not only for business owners. And actually, when you want to repatriate earnings, if you are a multinational, you have a bunch of issues thanks to that particular currency control, and that's why many companies left Venezuela. Airlines, retailers, industrial producers, and of course you have the oil companies. The oil companies didn't get affected that much, but basically everyone else got affected indeed. Now, something that happened just last week is that the SUDEBAN is the superintendent for the banking industry. The new superintendent was appointed, and apparently she will come with, the mission of making Venezuela, the Venezuelan financial system, banking system, coherent like a normal country. Getting access to the SWIFT system, also maybe creating the incentives for credit issuance. That's another problem that we have in Venezuela. Credit is virtually non-existent. It's like 2% of the GDP, so it's microscopic. To put it in context, the Latin American average is roughly 30% of credits on the GDP. A country like Chile, Panama, they have like 60% of GDP on credit. And well, the United States, I remember it was 160% of GDP that you have in credits. And Europe is something like 100% of GDP, and Venezuela is just 2%. A mortgage market pretty much not existent, credit cards pretty much, they exist, but it's very hard. It's very hard to even point that out. So you have to fix these things. A lot of the frictions on the Venezuelan economy come from the currency exchange control and the destroyed traditional banking system. And we're waiting these frictions to be solved as well. And going to other news this week, we got the price tag of Operation Absolute Result, and the operation that ended with the capture of the President Nicolas Maduro. And according to some estimates, according to Bloomberg, is $3 billion, the total amount of the operation. And there were $20 million a day, and most of the payments, most of the cost is associated to the fuel of the, the equipment, the F-35s, the bombers, whatever, and the troops' salaries. That, of course, there were like 15,000, 17,000 troops involved on that operation. Also, some very specific AI applications were used for that particular operation. That apparently there's some controversy with the owners of the company of the AI that they use for such operation. Well, anyways, just another fact for today. This week, also very important, we got the visit of the Foreign Affairs Minister or Secretary of State, the equivalent of the Secretary of State of Qatar in Venezuela. And this is very important because Qatar is actually a trusted, one of the few states that both the Trump administration and the interim authorities right now with Delcy Rodriguez fully trust regarding, diplomatic relationship. And Qatar has become a mediator, a broker between both the interim authorities and the U.S. administration's interest. So basically, we don't have that much information about what was discussed on the meeting, but apparently it's just to keep in track the particular transition process mandated by the United States right now in the country. So I'll say it's a good news on that regard. Other thing is gas prices in Venezuela. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. Look, most people think that Venezuela, the gasoline is cheap. And that is not the case. Since 5-6 years ago, the Venezuelan oil prices, the gas prices, were around, before that, were basically almost free. But then there is a system, a different tier system, that the open public price is $0.50 per liter, so that will be roughly $2 per gallon. And then you have another system that has been phased out of a couple of cents per dollar, but it's very hard to get that particular rate. And even at the 50 cents per liter rate, you still had some issues regarding the supply. Sometimes you have to go to long lines, or sometimes the gas pumps were completely empty. But also depends, with all of these frictions, political frictions in the country, and it was an issue. It was, a hit and miss situation. Sometimes you got gasoline, sometimes you don't. Now, there are a handful of gas pump stations in Venezuela, mostly on the east side of Caracas, where you have access to premium gasoline on $1 per liter. That's a little bit less of $4 per gallon. That is kind of like a pilot project that is been going on right now. But even on the 50 cents per liter, or $2 per gallon, you have fully supply. That's the reports that we're having right now throughout the country. Just to keep that in mind. And we have also news from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, regarding Venezuela. Apparently there are conversations that Venezuela might come back to the IMF. The IMF doesn't recognize the government in Venezuela since 2017, between 2017 and 2019. Therefore, since then, they have never been able to issue credit for Venezuela overall, since they don't recognize the authorities, mostly throughout Maduro's years. But apparently they are willing, to reintegrate Venezuela on the IMF system. Venezuela actually has some important reserves on this, multilateral supranational banking system on the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. Venezuela has roughly 8 billion US dollars in reserves on the SDR. SDR is the currency of the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. That's like the central bank of the central banks. And this particular currency is used amongst nations. The SDR is special drawing rights. So Venezuela has roughly 8 billion on this SDR currency, but they have no access thanks to the issue with the IMF and the SDR. But apparently Venezuela can have access to those funds again, but yeah, still seeing what's going on. And if right now, under the interim authorities, they will have indeed access to credit from the IMF. Honestly, if you ask me right now, I don't think that's going to happen, but just getting the recognition of the IMF is very important. And that's something that we didn't have in the past decade or something. But yeah, and just getting the recognition would be important. But getting loans right now from the IMF, I don't know, that's a stretch right now. Also, the Financial Times did a very interesting. They did a pretty interesting poll. Fuck, con razón, nadie escuchaba, nadie se quedaba. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, we have some issues. The mic got fooling me. Yeah, the mic just ran off battery. Yeah. Oh Lord, I didn't notice. And yeah, that's uncomfortable. Well, I don't know until which moment you guys lost me. So I don't know if I start again or just review very quickly the news. So we're gonna do some like a quick, bullet points in order to close this thing because I can do that much. And yeah, we're gonna go with that. Let's quick recap of the live stream. Drill baby drill. Companies are either expanding operations, the incumbent companies in the country, or they are doing the due diligence, or are in the process of coming back to the country. Also, the oil production in the country is poised to grow 40% this year, according to the US Secretary Wright, and we have the means in order to do so. There are projects that are very quick to execute, just needs a little bit of investment, but the projects are there. They don't require massive infrastructure or anything. Is there the conditions and the infrastructure and the oil fields and whatever? They just need quick revamping, and that's it. The sanctions. This is something that I did not address, and is the sanctions right now are not being removed, but they are being phased out. I put that on the Patreon newsletter. You have the full explanation, the detailed explanation of the sanctions. But the most important thing is that they are being phased out, and the license granted in order to circumvent the sanctions are being approved by the U.S. Treasury Department. Give me a second. Yeah, that's why I don't like doing live stream, but yeah. Okay, so the sanctions are poised to be completely removed, but still it's going to take a while, but they are being phased out as we speak. We got the visit of top military figures, U.S. military figures in the country. The U.S. Southern Command Commander, the General Francis Donovan, visit the country, and the Deputy Secretary of War, Joseph Umire. And this is very important because that is aligning the transition agenda within the country. So those are very good news. Regarding banking, the banking, I explained many times that the traditional banking has been one of the biggest, arguably the biggest industry that has been wrecked due to this this economic destruction caused in the country. But a new superintendent of the banking sector has been appointed, apparently with the mission of fixing the banking industry that has been completely destroyed. The credit levels in Venezuela are just 2% of GDP. To put it in comparison, Latin America is 30%, the average. In places like Chile and Panama is 60%. In the US is 160%, give or take. We talk about the Amnesty Bill that is very important for the oil industry overall. I mean, for every industry. The major reason why the Venezuelan economy has been destroyed is how random and arbitrary are the authorities. However, this Amnesty Bill is showing, and if you are an international, why should you care about this, is because it creates a better legal framework, shows
a political will to create a better legal framework that avoids how random and arbitrary are the authorities. The biggest reason why the Venezuelan economy has been destroyed 80% on GDP. AOC, I'm going to very quickly because it's irrelevant. There are terrible, most of the non-Venezuelan analysts regarding Venezuela, of course, are completely horrible. I don't recommend anyone, but AOC is the worst, but by far. Please don't listen to AOC regarding Venezuela. She knows nothing about Venezuela. The operation, the military operation in Venezuela, according to Bloomberg, had a price tag of 3 billion barrels. 3 billion US dollars, 20 million a day, and most of the costs were on fuel and troops' salaries. Qatar, we got a visit of the Qatar's Foreign Affairs Minister. This is important because Qatar is virtually the only trusted ally of both the Venezuelan interim authorities of Delcy Rodriguez and the Trump administration. So they are checking that everything is right on schedule. Gas prices in Venezuela have risen, but it's a pilot project on just a handful of gas stations on the east side of Caracas. The IMF, apparently Venezuela will be reintegrated on the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, but is not still very unlikely that Venezuela will get funding from the IMF. The Financial Times did a poll in Venezuela, and let me get this very quick, regarding the top priorities for the Venezuelan people. The participants were asked the top 10, just mentioned 2 of a top 10 list. And the number one, the biggest concern is cost of living, over 60%, healthcare, 44%, jobs, 35%, public services, 13%, education, 12%, human rights, corruption, democracy, crime, and drug trafficking, less than 1%. Cost of living, what is important because Venezuela is very expensive and it's very hard to make the income in order to sustain yourself, and the conditions in order to generate the income in order to cover the cost of living are draconian. It's horrible. That's one of the main, arguably the biggest reason why so many people fled Venezuela. And living in Venezuela is very expensive, is de facto dollarized. So if you're listening this from abroad and you expect a bargain, if you're a guy just looking for geo arbitrage cost of living, Venezuela is not going to be for you. Number 2 is healthcare. We have quote unquote free healthcare in Venezuela, but it's a hit and miss situation. Most likely you will end up being on the private sector. That is good, but expensive, especially for the average Venezuelan. Number 3 are jobs. The job market, a good job market is pretty much non-existent, but is improving from 0 to, something. Number 4, public services, aka utilities, are horrible, and we expect a substantial investment in the country on that regard. Number 5 is education. The education in Venezuela is good. The problem is it does not translate in a better standard of living in the country. That's why many white-collar educated people migrate. And number 6 is human rights, 9%. Not as important as the cost of living, but it's important to some Venezuelans due to the let's say, how random and arbitrary is the rule of law that ends up in human rights violations and political persecution and whatever that creates instability in the country in the first place that trickles down to the rest of, the areas in the country. And number 7, democracy, 7%. Well, yeah, another concern of the Venezuelan people, since, the elections are always, controversial, and this is something I'm not going to even address. Number 9 is crime. Like I said, Venezuela is kind of safe, but the biggest issue is not the street crime or anything like that. It's, how random and arbitrary are the authorities. And number 10 is drug trafficking, and less than 1%. So this is something that Venezuelans do not care about. And let's check if we have. Yeah, I think we. Yeah, another news. This is important. I did not mention this. That the Cisneros family, they are a very big, a wealthy family, old school, old money family in Venezuela. They are gathering a 1 billion investment fund for the country in order to rebuild the country after the 80% GDP collapse. So yeah, those are great news as well. And yeah, we don't have any questions, no further questions. So Gary, yeah, I see Gary. Hi, Gary. Nothing else to cover. Yeah, I have to fix the audio. Yeah, I lost my audio for the past. I don't know. I have to check that on the re-editing of this thing. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was a miscue on my own regarding the mic. It got the battery died of the mic, so that's why you were not able to hear me throughout some time. So, well, I apologize for that. Thank you again for joining me on this Sunday live stream. Thank you again for your attention. We'll see each other on the next video. Thank you again. Have a nice weekend.